Just a few weeks ago, the trustees of Cabrillo College, our community college here in Santa Cruz County, voted to change the college's name. They don't have a new name yet, but it is one of those issues that has sparked a lot of conversations. We've had some of them here on the airwaves before that decision was made. Here to talk with me is Adam Spickler, one of the people on the subcommittee that voted in favor of changing the name. Hi, Adam. How are you?
I'm good, Rachel. Thanks very much for having me.
Thanks for being on. I understand you're having a vacation. You took a little time, so extra appreciation to you for going beyond the call of duty as a trustee. So this decision was made first after a lot of input from the community. I understand in the final tally, 56% of the donors, students, and alumni were not in favor of the name change, and then the rest were. Lots of forums, lots of input. My first question is, why did the vote come out the way it did, do you think, even though it was the public opinion that you received was tilting the other way?
So I think what you're asking is, why did the Cabrillo Governing Board vote in a way that didn't necessarily align with the majority of the responses we got from the surveying that we did?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's the one we face probably the most frequently, and I appreciate the curiosity people have, the concern that some folks have shown, and I think there are a couple of ways to look at what we did from the college's perspective when we set up our subcommittee to explore the name of the college. We put together a task force to help us figure out how to set our priorities and parameters for going about doing this the right way. And what we ultimately wound up conducting over a 2-year period was first a really robust session of education series sessions. And that took place over the span of about 3 months over the spring semester of 2021 and spring into summer. And over the fall of 21, we conducted our listening sessions, and that was really pretty expansive as well. So the surveys really were geared towards people who participated in either the education series or the listening sessions. So already, we're not talking about just a broad sampling of our larger community. We're talking about folks who understood that Cabrillo was considering renaming the college, and folks came because they had a vested interest. That right away kind of skews who it is that you're surveying and how the survey might turn out. One of the most interesting pieces that our subcommittee paid a lot of attention to when we were doing our education series, one of the primary survey question asked, we would survey folks at the beginning, entering into whatever education session it was, because we had about 6 of them, asking them what they knew and understood about the college, how we got our name as a college, who Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo was, the namesake of the college. And then after the session ended, we asked some of those same questions to see if they learned anything. But then the question we ended with was, did anything you learn at this session tonight change your opinion about whether or not the college should continue to be named after Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo? The percent of folks who said, yes, what I learned tonight has changed my mind, was really one of the things in all of our surveying that stuck out the most, because there was and I don't have the numbers in front of me, so I'm not recalling, but there was a significant growth in the amount of folks who actually said, yes, what I learned through listening through this education session changed my mind. And I'm now where I was leaning towards keeping the name Cabrillo, I'm now leaning towards changing it.
Really interesting. So there was some change of heart. I have talked to some people, and full disclosure, I teach at Cabrillo College. I've taught there since the mid-90s, so on and off in the journalism department. And there were some people who said they didn't really know who he was at all, so therefore they only thought of the word Cabrillo as the college itself. They had no idea who he was. And of course, the whole process of talking about it has educated a lot of people about who this person was, and maybe that they weren't as savory as perhaps they had thought they were. But originally, a lot of people just thought it was the college's name without any really person behind the name.
Appear to have lost reception.
Okay, are you still there? But can you hear me? Hello?
I can hear you now, Rachel, but I missed a bit of what you said.
Okay, I was saying that a lot of people, before they knew anything about Cabrillo, thought that was just the college's name, had no connection to a person, which would have changed their attitude or their sentimental attachment to the name.
Right. And the folks that did, and this is one of the really interesting pieces for me, kind of argument feels like the wrong word, but I'm not sure of a better word to use. But some of the arguing is when the original founders picked the name of the college, they did so with, and I learned this from Sandy Leiden, somebody I respect greatly in our community, but somebody whom on this issue I disagree with. Our founding fathers, if you will, because they were all men, on the Cabrillo governing board at the time that the name was chosen, had a commitment to finding a name that would be unifying in our community. And so the point you just made, what's really interesting about choosing Cabrillo is it was somebody who was not known historically the way we understand him now. What was known is that just a year or so prior to the bond passing and the college becoming a reality for our community and the need to name it, was that the state legislature named the highway throughout the state of California, Highway 1 was named Cabrillo.
We're having some phone dropout with you, Adam.
Highway.
You just dropped out a little just there, so I wonder if maybe we could try Sorry, I wonder if we could try to have you call back on the phone line and see if that's any better, because we're losing.
This could be a running through our county, that Actonville and Santa Cruz.
So, Adam, I don't know if you can hear.
You bet.
Try calling.
Let me know what line to call.
Yeah, here we go.
I can hear you.
Okay, it's 831-900-5773. Let's get you on the phone.
Okay, I'll call back.
Thank you. He's calling from Mexico, so it's probably a case of just bad phone cell reception, but we'll find out in just a moment. Meanwhile, let me tell you about what's coming up at 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock, we have the Kooky Side of Crazy with Ryan Althouse, and he will be welcoming his 14-year-old, quote-unquote, little brother from Big Brothers Big Sisters. He'll bravely share his journey to reclaim his life following his mother's leaving the family and his father's death from an overdose. They're joined by Tracy Corpella of Santa Cruz County's Board of Education, discussing our school system's mental health efforts. Don't miss the Kooky Side of Crazy, coming up at 6 o'clock right here on K-Squid 90.7 FM.
Community radio for the Central Coast, KSQD, Santa Cruz.
The eighth wonder of the world! You are about to enter another dimension, a dimension not only of sight and sound, but of mind, a journey into the Grateful Dead Zone. I'm Eric Nelson, and every Saturday at noon, I assemble the Ultimate Dead Concert, a make-believe psychedelic ballroom with 2 sets of Dead music, each song taken from a different concert and a different year, selected from the very best of the Dead's vast live archive. So whether you're a Deadhead or a casual bystander, let there be songs to fill the airwaves on the Grateful Dead Zone, every Saturday at noon, only on KSQD 90.7.
caller's on the line.
So sorry about that, Rachel.
It's technology, It happens sometimes. Yep. I'm glad you're with us. Thank you for persisting. So we were talking about Sandy Leyden, who we all love. He's a great local historian. He was teacher at Cabrillo College for many, many, many years, professor emeritus. He was against this. That must have been tough. He was also one of the people that was there at the very beginning of the college. That must have been a hard conversation because of the level of respect we all have for him.
Yep. No, that's exactly it. I respect Sandy greatly. I disagree with him about this. And, he, Lookout did a Q&A with him. It got published, I think, this past weekend. And I appreciate his thoughtfulness behind his position. But it's frustrating to hear him, where he's positioned in our community, say things like it would have been more courageous to keep the name and essentially try to put the energy into explaining and rebranding the name.
It's a perspective for sure. I could see.
It is a perspective. Yeah. It is one that really is positioned in privilege, because when you go through the steps that we have as the subcommittee did around naming, and you hear from folks who are part of Native communities here locally, who really have a lifetime of generational trauma that they've experienced at the hands of colonialism, and that the name of this college really represents a piece of that, and to hear the kind of harm that's been done to folks in our community over and over and over again in a systemic way, it's privilege that says, well, let's keep the name of the college, harm caused be damned, and we'll do our best to explain it away. It's not enough. And all of the other ways in which people are concerned that changing the name of the college will harm the college, really the harm that's going to be caused to the college will be caused by those very people voicing those concerns. Those are the folks who are now, in larger numbers than I care to explain, are pulling their funds out of the Cabrillo College Foundation. And so scholarships will be harmed because of this.
This was one of the worries, I think, when donors had expressed concerns about the name change. This was something that people had forecasted perhaps happening. And I'm very sorry to hear that it is happening, that people are pulling their donations because of this. Any effect that this will have, you think it's large enough to harm numerous students at this point?
I don't know. I think that there won't be any financial damage to the college over the long run. We're committed to finding the funds it will take for the college to pay for this without pulling down any operating funds. So that, in my thought, is a non-issue. I also do not think that the reputation in any large part of the college will be harmed by this, where it will infringe on our enrollment. I really don't get a sense that the incoming student body will shy away from enrolling at the school because of this. In fact, what I'm hearing is the opposite. The folks who have been opposed are really the folks who are tied to the foundation and giving to the college in that regard. So the impact to scholarships is yet to be determined. I really hope that these are folks. I'm upset about this happening, but I want whoever is listening who has been a longtime donor and has decided recently to stop donating or to close down the endowment that they've had at the foundation, I just want to urge folks to think about the impact that will have on students in the long run, regardless of whether the name of the college remains or changes. Our student population is benefiting from these scholarship dollars in a way that has nothing to do with the name of the college. It has everything to do with the excellent teaching and the reputation of the college, and that's not going to change.
Do you think that the people, we can only guess why they're pulling their money. They're upset about the change vote, but and I wish I had been able to reach somebody who was in that category who could tell us personally why they did that. But do you think this is part of the greater culture wars that are happening in our country, where it's claimed, when people try to change names, that it's symbolism only and not actually doing anything, or that it's worse, that it's sort of just signifying or virtue signaling? On the other side, you have people saying, look, there's real problems with the history of this person, and we're just now understanding that, and it's time to move on from those memories and associations and do something more in line with current students' concerns. So those are kind of, do you think that we're caught up in a very particularly fractious moment in history where these issues aren't really decided very rationally, and people are quick to make a decision, say to pull their money or to get angry, or before thinking about what's at stake here?
I do. I think all of what you said is it's really true. In particular, you mentioned two kind of diametrically opposed perspectives when it comes to issues around social justice and symbolism. And the thing that's difficult is both of those perspectives hold truths. And the piece that gets lost in the conversation about those two truths are the power dynamics that lie within those two truths. Typically, the folks who are saying, I've been part of a minoritized community that has been oppressed in some way, and the symbol of your institution, whether it be a statue or a name or what have you, is one of those symbols that symbolizes the oppression I've experienced. That's somebody who, in telling their story, when you hear it, you can really only understand the true harm that's caused if you're somebody who can relate to it. And that's where I think the power dynamic piece gets lost. There are a lot of folks in our community who either don't have experiences where they can relate, or they're not looking through that lens of relatability to the real harms of symbolism, and how, in the long run, it's far more important, in my perspective, to lean into supporting folks who've been marginalized and oppressed, and where symbolism continues the harm of that, is, in my opinion, far more important than sustaining the symbolism simply for the sake of those thoughts that people have around culture wars.
Right.
Because it's dismissive. It's you're in a position of power, whether you recognize it or not, and it's unfortunate, and and those feelings are really real. I don't mean to dismiss those feelings. Those feelings are really real, and it's probably the first time that some of those folks feel like a decision's being made that takes some power away from them.
Interesting. I'm joined here by another trustee, Stephen Trujillo, who offered to give his perspective. And I understand there was only one no vote, but it wasn't. Was it yours? I'm just checking. Welcome to K-Squid, by the way.
Oh, no. When I ran for the office and I was talked into running in 2020, I realized 30 years ago the injustice of having his name on the side of the college. The reason is I had done research for Mexican-American history class to be offered as an academic one-semester alternative in the Salinas Union High School district in the 1990s. And my wonderful colleague, Manuel Cabrera, and I did a lot of research before the Internet in the local library. And what we found out about Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo horrified us. We both decided to write a letter to the campus president asking, isn't there something we can do about this? Can't this name be changed? We never heard back, of course. That was about 30 years ago.
So I guess change happened slowly, and you got your way. How are you feeling with the vote now, the way it went? Were you surprised?
I'm delighted to be. Well, first of all, I can't thank our two trustees, Adam and Carolina. Did a wonderful job in the report and everything. Adam, I've been listening online. Everything Adam just said is absolutely true. He's absolutely right, and I completely support what he's enunciated, what he said this afternoon. The truth of the matter is, yes, I understand the romantic nostalgia of why people feel that it's not just a removal of a name. It's removal of their identity if they closely identify with the college. And I've been working very hard for 2 years. I would talk to anybody who would listen to me. And it was a promise I made to my constituents here in District 7, and that's much of Watsonville and all of northern Monterey County, that if I got the opportunity to do so, I was going to work very hard to make sure we changed the name to a name that would be more appropriate, that reflected diversity, equity, and inclusion. And frankly, the Cabrillo name does not.
So I will ask both of you now to please give me a little information. We only have about 7 minutes left. Where are you going next now that you need to find a new name? All this debate is kind of a moot point because the decision has been made.
Right.
So where
Right.
next, and how do you find that perfect name? I know there's been some suggested names like Aptos or Santa Cruz County Community College. What are the top contenders, and what's the process going to be for finding that new name?
Adam, you want to go?
I can talk process. Sure. Thank you, Steve. In regards to the process, Rachel, we want to make sure, first off, what the Cabrillo board voted on was a recommendation that included staying away from names that represented, we weren't going to name the college after another person. And
Right.
We really wanted to lean towards something regional, something that was grounded in our values as a college.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the framework for the process. And what we want to do is, at this point, we are opening up a place on our website where people can directly click a link and either choose to donate, because we will have that option as well, to the fund we're starting towards renaming the college, or to use a link to be able to send in your vote for a new name. And we're going to start to sharpen and focus ourselves in this process a little bit more as 2023 starts to shape up, so that we can have a more formal process, so that we can reach enough of a consensus to take a vote by August of this summer, 2023.
And what's the timeline for once the name is chosen, changing signs, changing, websites and everything else?
It's an intentional, slow process. The reason being is some of these are going to be changes we'll make quicker, but a lot of the costs that people want or think logically would associate with a renaming and then any rebranding really are what we consider sunk costs, meaning every year a certain percentage of jerseys and uniforms for the sports teams, we buy new ones. And so over the course of 4 or 5 years, all of the uniforms and jerseys for all of our athletics teams will be replaced. Not all at once, but over a period of a few years with the new name, so that the cost of when we typically would be buying new jerseys and new uniforms get incorporated. So that it's not a cost that we would be accruing outside of typical business practice. So
Right.
things like business cards, things like that, it's going to take a few years. Signage, that's where we need to raise money. It's both signage and probably the biggest cost is going to be our IT infrastructure. All of the internal-facing web pages and websites, and by internal, I don't simply mean webs that the college uses that students don't. I'm including students, our public website. But beyond just what we use as a college for our public website, we also have to turn to our partners and make sure they have all the resources they need from us once we have a new name of the college to be able to update all of those, the workforce development board, the libraries in town, the city, the county, all the different ways in which people interact with our college. They're going to be utilizing a new name as well. So this is going to take some time.
It's going to be complicated. I would like to ask one more question, and this might take the remainder of our time, but I am really curious. What do you think what have you learned about the Cabrillo community through this process, and what do you think might be a positive of all of this? Putting aside, that you all voted to change the name, that's a given. Is there any other observation or learning that happened through this long process? That
I have many, but it would take forever. So I'll try to
top
be
three
concise.
then.
Adam knows I'm long-winded, and I am at meetings. But I'll have to tell you, it brought me a realization of the fact that I really feel, in talking to people in northern Monterey County, that they felt left out of the loop completely as far as Cabrillo College is concerned. Many of them didn't even know my predecessor's name, and I promised them they would know who I was, and I would continue to get back to them to ask them to give me input and feedback. And I pride myself on answering every email within 48 hours. The idea being that this is a process that is going to include all the community. We want everybody, including K-Squid people in the audience, and people who work at K-Squid like you, Barbara, to give us a name, to have some influence on, and of course, if you can afford to donate money, that would be great as well. But this is a very exciting process, and I know Adam shares my excitement, the fact that this doesn't happen very often, and this has been in the making now for since 1959. This is a big deal, and I know that Adam is excited about it. I'm terribly excited about it. And the other thing I realize is that as community college board trustees, we really need to stay in touch with our constituents, not just on the name change, but on other issues as well. And it's really important that they know that we are one of them. We are not some exalted poobah on high. We do have the decision as to what the final name will be, and, of course, voting on the yearly budget, which is $81 million at the moment. But the point is that by staying in touch with your trustee of the college, of community college, you get to know the process as to why these things take time and develop a sense of appreciation for why this is a very momentous decision in the history of this county and northern Monterey County. And we're going to approach it very systematically with a great deal of good intent so that we have a name that supports diversity, equity, and inclusion.
And Adam, final word?
Oh, yes, thank you. To answer your question, Rachel, it's resilience, incredible resilience. This question came up in July of 2020 when we were deep in the early stages of responding to the COVID pandemic and also the fires. We are an incredibly resilient campus. And when I think about how the debate has gone on whether or not to rename the college, it really strikes at the heart of values people hold very strongly. But at the end of the day, I think we are all, what I've witnessed are faculty, staff, and students who are able to come together, have informed conversations where there's intentional learning happening, and the resilience in learning, the resilience in higher educational learning. It's been profound and humbling, and I'm glad to be a part of it. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's great to hear. I will share some of this interview with my students. This is our last week next week, and they are definitely glad to be back on campus and continuing their education after lots of disruption and Zooming, and it's been a rough time, and I think a lot of them are really taking a hit when it comes to their daily lives, and so anything positive right now for them is just icing on the cake of them finally getting back to actual in-person learning, which is huge. And this campus has been really accommodating as best it could, given what we all had to go through. And as a professor, I will say, my students are smiling and laughing a lot more than they were last semester, and it's just getting better. So thanks for your service. I know that being on these boards is a choice, and it's not always an easy public-facing role. But thanks for taking the time to talk to our listeners over K-Squid. I really appreciate both of you, especially you, Adam, on vacation. So, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
It is a great pleasure to talk with you, Barbara, and thank you, and my best wishes to all your students.
Rachel, that's fine. No problem.
I'm sorry.
That's
Rachel,
okay.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Stephen
Rachel,
Trujillo and Adam Spickler for being here. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Rachel.
All right.
Thank you. You too.
All right.